What's going on, Player Profiler Nation? Welcome to episode 5 of Press Coverage. I am Matty Kiwoom, and I am hosting this week for the OG Theo Greminger. It is hashtag crossover week after all, so let's not waste any time and let's get right on into it. I am joined today on press coverage by one of the best fantasy managers in all the land, baby. He is the host of The Dominator, but not this week. He is the co-host of Man vs. Machine and First Class Fantasy. It is the Caliso, Billy Muzio. What's going on, my friend?
Oh, man. We get to record 2 times together this week. We were on The Dominator Sunday. We're back here on press coverage. It's Tuesday night. I don't know when this thing's dropping, but it doesn't matter. It's twice in the same week, and we're rocking and rolling. We're just taking over Theo's podcast today, and we're just gonna do our thing, and he can't stop us.
He's nowhere to be found. It's full-on substitute teacher week here at press coverage, and I love it because as a bonehead growing up, you know, the best days in school was always the substitute teacher day. Those are the days you got to watch the movies. I'm 35, so we always watch this movie called Stand and Deliver. I don't know if you young kids know what that is, but we watched it about 600,012 times growing up. But that's neither here nor there. We got Billy Muzio in the house. And like Theo likes to say each and every week, you know, the press coverage is a podcast where you can win on the margins, where you can get yourself better at fantasy and find ways to beat your league mates. And today we are talking draft strategy, not general draft strategy, but draft strategy in your seasonal 1 QB redrafts. Like Billy said, we had the pleasure of, you know, doing the Dominator together on Sunday. Billy drafted the Pros versus Joe's FFPC best ball, which was 1 QB, tight end premium. So we walked through that for about an hour. It was a blast. But today here on press coverage, we're going to get into the nitty gritty, Mr. Billy Muzio, Caliso. And if you don't know that reference, that was from Sunday where we called Billy Muzio Calisi, but then we called it Caliso because he's man. And he drafted not 1, not 2, but 3, but 4 dragons. He was the father of what dragons. And if you're not familiar with that, because you might not be, you might not know me from the game plan. But on the game plan, we call the dragon strategy when you go full on big dog wide receivers and try to burn the earth to the ground when it's time for your fantasy football. Billy, first question here I'm going to ask you here on press coverage.
Shoot it.
Like I said, Sunday we were doing Dominator together. And you drafted Pros versus Joe's. Great squad, by the way. And big shout out to Fantasy Mojo putting that thing on.
Yeah, that squad's sexy as AF.
Dude, that squad is sexy AF. You are not kidding. It's loaded. It has a lot of really, really fun players, really good players to cheer for. Also, dudes who expect to smash. We'll talk. Maybe we'll dive into the actual players at some point. But you went with I would say a 0 RB light type of strategy. We were joking that you were probably going to go many, many rounds without going running back. You pivoted, which is, I think, a through line that we talk about all the time, which is being flexible. But do you tend to go 0 RB?
I think it depends on the room. I think it's very important for you to be fluid, to be moldable in a draft room. I always say we need to be like Bruce Lee and be water, my friend, inside of a draft room. Because if I go in with a plan to go 0 RB and there's 3-4 other individuals who are going 0 RB, it's probably in my best interest to switch and start taking the value that's going to fall at the other positions, whether that's running back, tight end, quarterback. We will find a value somewhere. Mm-hmm. So I believe in being flexible in our drafts at all times because it gives us the best possible outcome inside of our builds. And yes, we want to stack as much as possible. We want to make sure that we have correlation as much as possible, especially best ball. But if we're in just a redraft league, at home leagues, or whatever it may be, it's always in our best interest to take the best player available. and for us to make sure we're maximizing our total point output. And sometimes that means that we go astray from our plan, and we need to make sure that we are adjusting, and we're making sure that we are accounting for those in the room. If I join a room and there's a bunch of, RotoViz guys, I know that they're going heavy wide receiver. I'm not going to go receiver that I'm going to start going running back that in that draft. We saw that in my buddy's draft, Dave Hubbard. Shout out to Dave. He was in the pros versus Joes the very next day, and it was a heavy wide receiver room. His start ended up being Bijan, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley fell all the way to the middle of the third round because people were pushing up wide receiver. They're pushing up quarterbacks. They're pushing up tight ends. Did he go in planning to go heavy RB? Probably not, but he ended up making that change simply because he evaluated the room and he made those adjustments.
So you talk about being flexible, makes a ton of sense. We actually talked about on the Dominator how you said you were not going to be painting the draft board green anytime soon, but the value fell not once but twice in a row. So staying flexible, it's kind of the number one thing you're looking to do. But you touched upon this about the RotoViz guys. So I have this follow-up question that I'm going to ask you, but everyone listening is going to have to stay tuned because we are going to hear from one of our sponsors.
Hey, people always ask me, what's the World Series of Fantasy? What's the Super Bowl of Fantasy? And it's easy. It's the FFPC. Their signature Players Championship has a $6 million prize pool. And their best ball leagues start in February. And they're the answer to so many questions. Hey, what's the best place to get a Dynasty Orphan? Well, you can adopt a Dynasty Orphan at the FFPC right now. There's more orphans at the FFPC than anywhere else on the internet. That's why we partner with them. So if you want to play fantasy football for low, medium, high stakes, you love Dynasty, you love best ball, you love seasonal leagues, all types of fantasy footballers need to go to the FFPC. And remember, use promo code UNDERWORLD. Promo code UNDERWORLD gets you $25 off your first team. Promo code UNDERWORLD, $25 off your first team, no matter what the format is, at the FFPC. Go get it.
Shout out FFPC and make sure you use that promo code UNDERWORLD and get yourself a little discount. So here's a follow-up question. We were talking about the teams that go zero RB. So you get as RotoViz, they go a lot of high-end wide receivers to start. So if you're in a sharp draft like that, and multiple managers will be leaning towards or at least starting off with the zero RB strategy, what is the zag to everyone's zig? Is it going hero RB, hoarding RB, or is it simply just being better at executing the zero RB strategy itself?
No, if you have multiple people going zero RB in a draft, I think it's in your best interest to zag. And I think that you're going to see a lot of value fall at the running back position because they're not going to be selecting running backs. They're going to be looking to push up receivers. They're going to be looking to push up tight ends, and they're going to be looking to push up quarterbacks. Traditional zero RB will take those three positions all before round 6 or 7, and they really won't take their running back until about round 7 or 8 at the earliest. And sometimes round 10 or even later. And so if that's the scenario, we're going to see some significant value at the running back position. And so that may be that you starting 4 straight running backs. And if you have a 2 running back start and 2 flex, then great. You're filling your flex with running backs, and then you're piecing together your other positions. But look back at that FFPC start that Dave had instead of the pros versus Joes yesterday. And so if you're starting off with Bijan, Jonathan Taylor, and Saquon Barkley, Saquon today signed his tender. So kiss that price goodbye. That thing is now
round 3 price for Saquon is going to be a golden price. It was like remember a few weeks ago where you were able to get Stephon Diggs about 2 rounds later because he was going to be a disgruntled wide receiver, and then he reported in like 12 hours later. So you have like these windows to smash on value.
And especially with volume drafters, you can take advantage of those windows. Like I have the only Cooper Kupp and Diggs team in the tournament at FFPC, and it's both of them are round 1 picks. Both of them are going before pick 8 on average. But because that disgruntled week, he fell to me at like 2-7 one week, and it just kept dropping and dropping and dropping. But back to the point is we want to zag. We're going to be selecting running backs when they are going heavy wide receiver, and we're going to hope for just a monster RB start, and then we can start piecing together the rest of the lineup.
Billy Muzio, you have some of the best projections in all of fantasy, the fantasy verse. I like to call it the extended fantasy verse. So like kind of where to pounce here and there, but our listeners here at Press Coverage may not. So if you're gonna go horde RB, you're gonna completely zag when everyone's zigging, and you're gonna take let's say 4 guys off the top, 4 running backs. What are some receivers that you really like to attack there, whether it be round 4, 5, 6? Where are you going to jump into the wide receiver pool? And so who are some of your favorites there?
Yeah, I love where like Deebo Samuel's going this year. Deebo's going in around 4 on average over at FFPC. And we know that there's some uncertainty at the quarterback position. We know Brock Purdy was actually cleared to start resuming practice, which is phenomenal for their stock.
Huge.
That being said, we don't expect him to throw the ball downfield early and often, right? They want to regain strength in that arm. They want to regain confidence in that arm. And so that's going to benefit everybody who's going to be, getting screen passes, short intermediate routes, behind the line of scrimmage. One of those main beneficiaries is going to be Deebo Samuel. So love the fact that he's versatile also in the running game. So love the upside. I mean, there might be a little biasness back here with the red and gold behind me as well. We won't mention that. We'll just keep moving along here. I love Jerry Jeudy this year. I think that we're going to see a bounce back year from Russell Wilson. Chop up last year to Hackett. Hackett couldn't hack it in Denver, and Russell Wilson had his worst year of his career, arguably, and then now he gets Sean Payton, who has been a offensive mastermind, and they bring over a whole new coaching staff with them as well. Let's get another year with his repetition with his receivers. Everyone's healthy and on the field, which we haven't seen either inside. Last year we had everyone was hurt. We'd never had Sutton, Dulcich, and Jeudy on the field for more than a few games. And so the fact that we get everybody back on the field, everybody's healthy, everybody's working together, minus Javonte. But that's going to be good for the passing game because they're going to be passing more. And so really like Jerry Jeudy this year in round 4. There's so many receivers going late this year. Like we look at like Chris Godwin's going late. We have Mike Evans going late. Deontay Johnson is one of my favorite targets this year because he's going as like wide receiver, like 33 to 36 on average. He's had 140 targets at every single one of his careers, or every single game or year. Gee, I can't even speak today. Holy shit. Every single year. Every single year outside of his rookie year, finally got that one out. So besides his rookie year, 140 plus targets in every single year, going outside of wide receiver 30 right now. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I think he's being severely undervalued and he's going to significantly outperform that ADP.
Does your projections have him scoring a touchdown this year?
Yeah, I'd put all my money on playing a fantasy that the fact that he'll score 1 touchdown this year.
I mean, yes, and the target should be there. We're hoping that the offense takes a step in the right direction as a whole. Kenny Pickett going to his second year, George Pickens as well. Obviously, a healthy Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth. This team should get going. We talked about it a little bit on the Dominator Sunday, so let's bring it up here on press coverage. Do you also expect, like I do, that the AFC North is going to be a little bit more offensive-mindedly friendly? No, I can't speak. What is this bug that you sent to me across the entire country? Is it going to be more offensive-minded now that there's these high-powered offenses getting ready to face off in 23?
Can we just call them shootout-ish?
Shootout-ish. Shootout-ish. You come to press coverage for the shootout-ish.
People would think we're Slavic. I think we could see a little bit more shootout potential inside of this division.
There it is.
Cincinnati, of course, explosive. I think Pickett probably takes another step forward. We have improved offensive line inside of Pittsburgh. They spent a round 1 on offensive line. They spent a round 3 on a blocking tight end. They spent round 7 on offensive line. So 3 of their picks they spent on offensive line. We know they have Deontay Johnson. They brought in Allen Robinson. Okay, whatever, but they still have Pickens as well. But I think that offense is going to be improved this year. Browns expecting a bounce back year this year from Deshaun Watson. And then, I think overall we can be pretty excited about this division. I mean, Baltimore, of course, they add Todd Monken. Lamar Jackson is healthy. They added a few more weapons for him in the passing game. I think that this division is looking like it's going to be a little bit more pass heavy, looking like it's going to be a little bit more friendly for fantasy scoring.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I want to see, because Baltimore last year had a bad defense, but traditionally they're usually pretty good at defense. The Steelers last year had a bad defense, but they saw some injuries, and that's the reason why they went down that route. So I want to see how these defenses are looking inside of camp. I want to see what the news is on them, but ultimately I think the offense is a little bit more high-powered, so we will see some higher scoring games, but I do think that the defenses might hold back the overall potential of the shootout-ish campaign. Yeah. But I do think that we will see some more scores.
Come to press coverage for the fantasy football, but you stay for Billy and Matty making up words as we go along this whole thing. Now, we talked about Jerry Jeudy. We talked about Deontay Johnson. These guys, you can probably get both of them if you decide to stack up the running backs. In the Pros versus Joes FFPC contest, Jeudy went 5-5 and Deontay went 7-4. Neither of them quite made it to where you were drafting. You were going out of the 6-7 spot, or 7-6 spot, I should say. But if you do want to go, a little bit running back heavy, you have the chance to not only get two of them, but Debo also went 4-4, another guy that you mentioned, so you can stack up on those receivers a little bit late. But what I want to do now, because some people tuning in here, we're looking talk about draft strategy, help the folks out, get an edge amongst their league mates. So I want to hit the rewind button here. We talked about what we would do if there are multiple 0 RB strategists that you're competing against. So let's just say you are in a draft, you have the 1-9 or later, you're in the back half or the back 3 or 4 picks of the first round. And let's say that Chase, Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Christian McCaffrey, and Travis Kelce, they're all off the board. You have the 109, you have one of those, like 110, 111, 112. Are you for sure going to go running back there, Bijan Eckler, Jonathan Taylor, or are you going to go ahead and grab your wide receiver one and get your Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown type of player?
I'm probably going. Did you say Diggs is off the board or on the board?
Diggs is not off the board, so Diggs would be another wide receiver.
Diggs would be my probably go-to here. I like the Buffalo Bills offense. Diggs, the clear-cut number 1. The number 2 in this offense is still to be determined. Gabe Davis is slotted in as the wide receiver 2. They added Kincaid. I know they still have some other pass catchers, Khalil Shakir. Cook is expected to take on a larger role, but I think that Diggs is the clear-cut number 1 and probably going to be looked at early and often. Love Stephon Diggs again this year. Love Amon-Ra St. Brown as well. Mm-hmm. I think you can make a case for him to go inside round 1 pretty easily. And we have to look at the way the turn shapes up, but I like going double receiver at the end right there because there's a lot of good running backs that you can get in round 3, 4, 5, and 6 as well. I think it just depends upon what the turn does as well. If I'm at the 9 spot and they double tap receiver, maybe their value falls to you at running back. And so again, being flexible here, but I'm probably taking Stephon Diggs there at the 9 spot.
So Diggs off the board too, and I want to let everyone, listening, we want to reiterate, you can go hero RB. You can even go RB horde and still take a receiver at the top, right? Like,
that's right.
If you're going to be in the back half of the first, or the back end of the first, tapping receiver and then immediately pivoting and start grabbing those running backs is a perfectly viable strategy because you're not going to have to wait a ton. You're basically, right around that swing pick, right? So you can do that. Is that something that you've done? What are your thoughts on kind of not necessarily going to RB in round 1, but then maybe double tapping 2 and 3 running back?
Yeah, I think you can absolutely take a hero running back in round 2. There's even some in round 3, like you mentioned. So like Nick Chubb is going pretty frequently in round 2. Mm-hmm. Derrick Henry was going at the end of round 2 for a while. He's starting to climb up a little bit. You have Tony Pollard, who maybe most won't consider a hero running back, but based upon his expected volume this year in 2023, in my opinion, he would classify as a hero running back. So there is a lot of potential hero running back builds that you could do with a running back in round 2 or in round 3. And just depends on your risk tolerance as well. We got Breece Hall, who's going middle to end of round 3 right now. Mm-hmm. Jahmyr Gibbs going middle to end of round 3. I mean, a lot of these guys could potentially be a hero RB candidate. Just depends upon the role and involvement. So I probably wouldn't be as comfortable with those two, but I think you could make a pretty easy case for Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry as your hero RB in round 2.
Yeah, they're in smash spots, especially in 2023. Nick Chubb is getting all the hype, right? That he's going to get the passing down role. How much credit do you, or how much do you support that notion that he's going to be the guy on the field, not first, not second, third down, all the downs?
I don't think that they're going to fully commit to him as much as we would like to from a fantasy perspective. I mean,
that's interesting.
We want to see him get 40, 50 targets. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think he'll see more than he has in the past this year. He'll probably be in that mid to high 30 range, which is going to be significantly more than we've seen. But I doubt that we'll see 40 or 50 from him. Word out of camp is that they really like Jerome Ford, and I know that they've been talking him up in camp about his versatility, his speed, his overall work ethic. And so I think that we, unfortunately, will probably see more Ford than we are hoping for, at least for us Chubb managers. You know, Hunt finally left town, and we were expecting to see this massive workload. And I do think that we do see an increased workload, but I just don't think that we're going to see a true every down back. Like when we think every down, we think Derrick Henry, 300 plus carries, 30 plus targets. And so I don't necessarily think that is going to be the scenario for Nick Chubb. Don't get me wrong. He's still like top 5 in my running back projections. I love the guy, love the talent, and think he's probably the best pure runner in the NFL. I just have some concerns with how much the Browns are going to commit to him in the passing game.
He had 1,300 rushing yards last year, 13 touchdowns. He smashed last year, and he wasn't a massive factor in the passing game at all. So you don't necessarily need to have him be viable in the pass game for the Cleveland Browns for him to be your hero RB.
Every single year, I make a bet that Nick Chubb's going to lead the league in rushing. I have not yet won, but I'm going to revisit that well because it's just a matter of him getting the opportunities. And if he can see another 300 plus carries this year, he has a good shot.
Yeah, okay. So what is he usually like fifth best odds, sixth best odds? Like it's probably a little extra. There's probably some juice on there, right? He's probably not the one.
I haven't actually taken a look at the odds yet on that line. I know I'm going to make the bets, but I regardless of what the odds are, I'm going to make the bet because it's just one of those things that I continue to donate my money on this line, but I think eventually it will hit.
That's the way to say it, yeah. Mr. Muzio, we appreciate your continued donation, your yearly donation.
Thank you for your annual contribution. But I do think that he has the skill set. 2, he's in the offense that he could possibly do it. And now they're lacking some extra, weapons inside of the backfield. So I think that he has a decent shot again this year at potentially doing it.
Chubb's in a smash spot. We love Chubb this year, no doubt about it. Now I want to ask you about some a little bit later in drafts here. So we're helping these listeners build out their drafts. I'm giving some extra strategy as they head into draft season. We're knocking on that door. Full-fledged draft season is about a month away. So everyone's going to be ready to rock and roll. Now, if you're a psychopath like Billy or myself, you're already 600 drafts in, 500 drafts in. We're crazy, but the real draft season starts in about a month or so. So name me some of your favorite running backs that are going between rounds 6 and 9.
David Montgomery going between round 6 and 7. We know that the Lions have one of the best offensive lines in football. We saw what Jamal Williams did in this role. I think that David Montgomery is a superior running back at this point in his career than Jamal Williams was last year. Now, I don't expect that type of touchdown production, but I do expect him to have more efficiency on the ground, and he's also a decent pass catcher as well. We know that they're lacking weapons inside of the passing game. Jamison Williams being suspended for the first 6 games. They brought in Marvin Jones, which I like, but at the same time, it's just lacking the pizzazz that we would hope for inside of this offense. So I think David Montgomery probably sees a larger role than people are expecting. I know Jahmyr Gibbs is projected as a top 15 back across most sites, including ours. That being said, I think that there's room for both of them inside the top 24. I also really like Rachaad White. He's been one of my guys since he joined the league last year, and I love his dual threat ability in the passing game and as a rusher. Kind of reminds me a lot of David Johnson when he was young and good. coming in the league, just has that fluidity to him. And I think that we know that we have some opportunity here inside the backfield for, again, a lack of weapons. Leonard Fournette is no longer with the team. The only other competition that he really has is Keyshawn Vaughn and Chase Edmonds, who have both kind of disappointed up to date in their careers. So I think White's going to see a pretty productive year and probably be a 3-down back inside of this offense. Another back that I really like in this range. Man, there's so many. This is
that juicy spot, right? This is a nice spot
yeah.
for this year.
Look, you have the board pulled up right now?
I do. So some names I could throw out that are going in this range.
Yeah.
Mixon's going. He went 4-1 in your draft. Aaron Jones went 4-6.
I thought you said round 6 through 9.
Yeah, I'm getting to it.
You're getting to it.
I'm just trying
to knock off patience.
Down boy. Yeah, I'm just trying to build this so that you know exactly what we're talking about here. Who's off the board? Miles Sanders went in 5, so now here we go in round 6. We saw White, Dobbins, Akers, Montgomery, Pacheco, Swift, Pierce, Kamara, Connor, Cook, Javante, Rashad Penny, Dalvin Cook, Antonio Gibson, Samar J. Pirine.
2 I mentioned were already in there. Cook is another one I really like inside Buffalo. We know
James
that
Cook, not Dalvin. James.
Yeah, that's right. The younger of the brothers. James, looking at a potential larger role in this offense. They got rid of Singletary. We saw the accident with Naheem Hines this week with the jet ski. Not that he was active inside the backfield, but it did have some involvement. So it's one less mouth to feed per se. So I like James Cook. I like the explosiveness of this offense and his involvement. We saw him really kind of take off and get more involved towards the second half of last year. The other one is Swift. I've always been a Swift homer. I've been a firm believer saying that if Swift were given the role of Christian McCaffrey, he could potentially be the RB1 in fantasy football. I don't expect that type of workload. It is the Eagles. They do like to rotate, 3 backs in this backfield.
Right.
That being said, even if he's seeing 30 to 40% of the share, that's going to be enough for him to be productive. He had some of the highest yards per touch inside of the NFL. Don't quote me, but I think it's top 3 without looking it up. And I really like his potential inside of this Eagles offense. So the Eagles have, again, arguably the best offensive line in football. And with their rushing quarterback is going to, create lanes in the running game. It's going to spread the field and create a lot of opportunities for Swift. Not necessarily a lot of checkdowns, which is what he's been good at in his career and getting the ball in the air. But they may design a few more plays in that regards. But even if he is only limited to the ground, which I don't expect, but if it is more limited than we are expecting, his breakaway ability and his upside is unleashed into this offense.
Are you afraid at all that Rachaad White might not be as talented based on some of the advanced metrics that we have at playerprofile.com last year? Or is he a volume play in terms of opportunities in your mind? What is it about Rachaad White? And like I said, the naysayers are going to say his efficiency metrics were dookie last year. So can he succeed with the touches, or does he just need a massive amount of volume to be good?
So I think this is a 3-part answer. One, let's start with last year, his efficiency metrics. This offensive line had suffered significant injuries and they were just decimated. So I expect this offensive line to be much improved. That's number 1. Number 2, he's no longer competing against Leonard Fournette for passing volume and rushing volume. So when we talk about his expected total touches, volume is king in fantasy football, and he's looking like a RB that could see well over 50% of this backfield's workload, which is hard to say across the league. There's maybe a handful of teams that you can comfortably say this individual or this team is going to see one back that's going to see 50 to 60% of that workload, right? Off the top of my head, we can say Nick Chubb, we can say Jonathan Taylor, we can say Derrick Henry, you can say Christian McCaffrey. Outside that, it starts to get pretty closer to 48, 52%, right? And so, I think that when we look at the competition for touches, Rachaad White has a pretty clear path to success. The last piece is Baker Mayfield being an addition here. Now, most people would say this is probably a bad thing for this offense, but when we see a quarterback who struggles, what do they typically like to do? They like to dump the ball off. And when you have a pass catching back like Rachaad White, it's going to open up more opportunities for him to get a few more catches, especially if Baker is struggling and wants to use him as an outlet. And so I think all of these things combined, it creates this like 3-pronged opportunity. It's going to allow him to prop up his fantasy for success.
The price seems nice too. They're around 6 for these guys,
Mm-hmm.
and I do want to add just one thing about Rachaad White that our listeners should remember, and one thing about David Montgomery. There's something that's going to help ease your mind when you're clicking that draft button in the 6th round. One of these guys, Rachaad White might not have been efficient, but he's still athletic, so he still possesses a skill set to improve upon those efficiency metrics. We're talking about a guy who's 6 foot 214, ran a 4.48. He has 84th or higher percentile scores in speed and burst. He was the 3rd most athletic running back in his class just a couple years ago, which was highlighted by Ken Walker, Breece Hall, James Cook. So there were some good athletes in that class. So he is athletic. So I do believe that his efficiency metrics could improve. And also David Montgomery. I know they drafted, Jahmyr Gibbs early, but they gave him a contract that they can't get out of until after 2024. So we are going to be seeing David Montgomery in a Detroit Lions uniform for the next 2 years. They are not going to just throw this guy aside because they grabbed Jahmyr Gibbs. They still believe in his skill set. They have seen him a bunch. He only played, a few miles away down in Chicago. They played 2 times a year his entire career. I do like David Montgomery there in the 6th round. I think he can present a whole lot of value grab there, especially if you do the Caliso at the top and get yourself some dragons, baby. So we talked about rounds of 6 through 9. Nice. Now in rounds 4 through 8. I noticed you're seeing a lot of second-year wide receivers, a bunch of them really coming off the board within those 4 rounds. So are you excited about these second-year guys? And let me just get into it a little bit more, too. Are you more likely to tap Christian Watson, Drake London at the beginning of 4 or 5? Are you waiting a little bit and going after the Treylon Burks, George Pickens, Jahan Dotson? Those guys are going around 7 and 8. So any of those pass catchers that you're targeting, and do you have a favorite amongst the second-year guys?
Yeah, I own way too much Christian Watson already. Like, I'm starting to cool the Jets because I own so much of him. He was going in round 5, like middle to end of round 5 when the drafting season started. At the FFPC inside of redraft right now, he's climbing into round 3. At that point, it's getting a little steep, but I do think that he has the potential to still give a return on that investment. There's really no one else in this receiving core that is a direct threat to his target share. I know we have Romeo, who joined this team the same time as him last year, but I think it's a clear-cut number 2 behind him. You could argue that Jaden Reed is going to be competing with targets against Romeo there, and then you have 2 rookie tight ends who are going to be looking to earn playing time in 2023. But we know that rookie tight ends come in and it takes time for them to develop. They got to learn the offense. They got to learn the blocking schemes as well as the route tree. And so it takes time for them to get into a groove inside of their new offenses. I like Luke Musgrave. He's a Bendite here from Bend, Oregon myself, but I do think that it will take, that's what we call ourselves, Bendites.
I don't know, Bendites.
Yeah, it will take time for him to get up to speed inside of this offense. So I think Christian Watson, even at a modest 22% target share is what I have him projected for, he still comes in as RB15. And I look over at his touchdown rate, which I have at about 8.5%, which in comparison to, the average receiver is high, but in retrospect, looking at what he did last year, is low in comparison to the numbers that he performed at the touchdown rate into that category. And I think that right now I have him, like I said, 8.5%, which is 6.5 touchdowns. And that might be pretty low in comparison to what he could perform, especially when we saw that streak that he went on last year, where he scored, I think it was like 5 or 6 in a matter of 5 games. And so really like his upside. I like his potential. We saw him in the limited capacity with Jordan Love last year have a connection and some chemistry together. 22% target share, like I mentioned, 8.5% touchdown percentage, and it comes in as wide receiver 15 in my rankings. Be able to get him in rounds 3, 4, and 5 at times. Love the upside, love the potential. The other wide receivers that you mentioned there that I've been targeting at least for year 2 is Jahan Dotson. Another player that performed exceptionally well in his rookie year. And I know that Terry McLaurin has not really been a huge touchdown scorer. Jahan Dotson came in and had a lot of touchdowns for a rookie. I think he finishes like wide receiver 38 or so in fantasy points per game. And I think that if he's able to be a little bit more consistent and stay on the field, he got injured last year and missed some games.
Yeah.
I think that he has the potential to technically outscore Terry McLaurin in PPR points because of the upside that he presents inside this offense. I still like Terry McLaurin a lot. He's one of my favorite players in the NFL, but I do think that he does lack that touchdown upside that we could see from Jahan Dotson.
What quarterback is better for these pass catchers, Jacoby Brissett or Sam Howell?
Man, I like Howell more than the average Joe. That being said, I do think that he'll be on a shorter leash because Brissett ran the Browns offense very well last year. And some would argue that he ran it better than Deshaun Watson did when Watson came back from suspension. And we saw this offense really clicking, in Amari Cooper in particular, with Brissett last year. We'll find out who it's going to be. I think Howell probably leads most of the year at the quarterback position. We may see a few games of Brissett depending upon how Howell does, or maybe underperforms at times. But I think that Eric Bieniemy, coming over from the Chiefs inside this offense as the new OC, is looking to prove, doubters wrong, and was going to look to get creative. And they have weapons. Like, that's the thing with Howell. Like, Howell may be inexperienced, but they have Terry McLaurin. They have Jahan Dotson. They have Curtis Samuel, who's very versatile. They have two capable running backs, one who's an exceptional pass catcher with Antonio Gibson. So there's a lot of weapons and a lot of outlets for him to utilize from the quarterback position. And I really think that he's going to outproduce ADP, but significantly outperform expectations.
Which would make Jahan Dotson definitely a smash there in rounds, 7, 8, where you can get him. But let's talk about the Green Bay Packers real quick. Is your love for Christian Watson tethered to your belief that Jordan Love will be a competent quarterback, or do you think that Christian Watson possesses the skill set to be good regardless?
No, I'm not crazy about Jordan Love. I have a pretty modest projection of 61% completion percentage for him. I only have him at a 4% touchdown rate, which is not high. It's only 21 total passing touchdowns. It just breaks down to the total volume and opportunity in this offense. I mean, there's really no clear-cut number two. I mean, Romeo Doubs, and you could, argue Jaden Reed or that 2/3 spot, but there's no tight end in this offense outside the rookies, who, like I said, are going to take time to get up to speed. And so for me, it just breaks down to opportunity and total amount of target share. 22% of targets is a decent amount. From a number one perspective, it's not like a Amon-Ra St. Brown or Devontae Adams of 28, 29%. But in this offense, 22%, according to my projections, is roughly 126 targets. And so when we can expect him to catch the ball about 61% of the time, and he has that big playability where, his yards per reception coming in at 14.9, the algorithm, I dropped it down, gave him some regression at 14.3, still equates to over 1,100 yards. And so I think that there's a lot of potential for Watson. And it's not that I'm necessarily high on Love. I just think that the opportunity is there for him to seize.
They did lose. They lost their quarterback. They went from Aaron Rodgers. Now they're going to have Jordan Love. But Jordan Love has a big arm. And I think most importantly, the coaches really haven't changed, right? They still have the OC, same head coach going into next year. So their strategy and their game planning should be relatively similar. And we're going to want that to stay the way it was in 2022 for Christian Watson. In week 10, which is when we saw a significant jump in terms of snap share, that was really when he went from hovering around anywhere from 22 to 30%, and he jumped up to 85%. That was week 10. 164 air yards, 100 air yards, 82, 131, only 18, which is crazy because the next week, 76, 131, 103. He is a big play machine, which obviously plays into his skill set. Dude's 6'4", 210 pounds, ran a 4.36 40, absolutely destroyed the combine when he came out as a rookie. So he is a perfect candidate to really ascend into that next level. So we talked about at the top of the show, if you have to zag while everyone is zigging and go early running backs, Christian Watson can bring a massive amount of return for you in his second year. I want to talk a little about tight ends here, Billy. What tight ends interest you if you don't get the Kelseys, Andrews, Kittles, or Hawkinsons?
There's so many that are going from like tight end 5 to like tight end 11. that I really like. I love Higbee this year. He's going so late. When I look at tight ends, I always say I want a tight end who could potentially be the number 1 or the number 2 option inside the passing game. The Rams have a lot of question marks at receiver. We know Cooper Kupp is the number 1. Number 2 is kind of up for grabs. Van Jefferson is probably leading that role right now. But then you have the number 3 is Puka Nakua. It's Tutu Atwell. It's Ben Skowronek. It's pretty disgusting, honestly. So I think
Not good.
I think you can say that Higbee is pretty clearly the number 3 and probably at times the number 2 inside this offense on a regular basis. I really like Pat Freiermuth. Same could be said about him. He's been kind of a target machine in his early career. And in my opinion, is probably the number 2 option inside of this passing game. I also really like Dulcich this year, who's going later than most of the names. And again, that's just tied to Russell Wilson, who I think is bound for a bounce back year. We have seen Sean Payton utilize the tight end position pretty heavily in the past with Jimmy Graham. And so we know they like to utilize that joker, right? That joker position. And I think that we could see that from Greg Dulcich, who has, a lot of athletic ability. Those are the 3 that I really like in that range. If you want to push it and go real late, you could argue Gerald Everett is one that I really like.
Yes, I like Everett.
It's just based upon volume in this offense. I expect the Chargers to throw, 700-ish times. We saw Herbert last year have 699 attempts himself, had that bum shoulder and the broken rib. And so Everett saw over 80 targets last year. I think we could expect him to see close to 80 targets again this year. So there's a lot of options at tight end. If I don't get Travis Kelce or Andrews, my strategy is usually just to punt the position and then grab 2 or 3 inside of this range who have a real shot at being like a top 7 or 8 tight end.
So you're not, if you miss out at the top tier, like you miss out on Kelce, you miss out on Andrews, you're saying no thanks to Pitts in the 4th, Waller, Goddard in the 5th, Njoku or Ingram in the 6th, 7th. You're saying no, I'll get my tight ends later.
I mean, not necessarily. I mean,
okay.
I guess I said that, but at the same time, it's like if the build, if it's the mold, I will go one of those tight ends. I'm usually passing on Pitts unless I get a very big discount. Just because I have concerns about the volume inside the passing game here. Ritter was not, a heavy volume pass thrower last year in his limited capacity. They added Bijan. They have Drake London. We've seen them want to run the ball, top 5 in the league. And so there is concerns the amount of volume to go around for these 3. And so there's some concerns there. I think that he should be going about a round later. I do like Darren Waller, especially when he slips in like the middle to end of round 5 in FFPC, which is tight end premium. You can get him much later in home leagues where there's not tight end premium. But Waller, again, when we talk about leading a team in targets or being the number 2 options, there's 15 wide receivers on this Giants offense, and all of them are shit. And Darren Waller is the clear-cut number 1. I mean, the number 1 wide receiver for the Giants right now is Isaiah Hodgins. Number 2 is debatably Paris Campbell. And then you have Wan'Dale Robinson, who's hit the pup today, who's recovering from ACL. You have Sterling Shepard, who, if you look at his injury chart on Player Profiler, it's brighter than a Christmas tree on December 25th. And I mean, and he hit the pup today. They added Cole Beasley. I mean, I can't even list off all 15 receivers. There's literally 15 receivers on the team now. You go to the depth chart, there's 15 of them. Darren Waller, the clear-cut number 1, and the only one that I have projected for over 100 targets. So I will take Darren Waller in the 5th all day at FFPC.
You could probably stack a lot of those receivers on top of each other's shoulders, and their height would then be equal to Darren Waller. So they have a specific type that they're bringing in.
It's like
yeah, with that new Wonka movie coming out. For whatever reason, Brian Daboll, very big fan of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Let me ask you this, though. If you could, let's just say, guarantee this, a fantasy football genie comes out of the football phone, and you can guarantee that Darren Waller stays healthy for the entirety of the season, is he tight end 3?
He could be tight end 2.
Over Andrews.
Yes. Yeah, if we knew he was going to play 16 games today,
you could guarantee it.
Guarantee 16 games from him. Guarantee that he was going to be the number one target in this offense. I would say that he should probably be drafted as tight end 2 or 3.
Yeah, and because of that, I am a huge fan of trying to grab Darren Waller in my seasonal redraft leagues in round 5 if he gets there. I'm not pushing round 4, but if he's in there in round 5, I'm more than happy to take that. If not, I'm with you. I'm the type that will wait and grab my Higbees and my Everetts, all those guys, a whole bunch of rounds later. We talked running back, we talked receiver, we talked a little tight end, so we got to talk a little QB, Mr. Muzio.
Nah.
Do you have a preferred QB strategy? Do you like to grab one early? Do you go mid-round? Or do you like to execute the JJ, the late-round QB?
So I'll start by saying, for those who don't know me, I'm a volume drafter, so I do every strategy. But if I had one bullet, and if I had one
You had
team,
one bullet, yeah.
And it's the golden gun, right? And I pull it out. Yeah, GoldenEye.
Yeah.
You can't pick Oddjob. That's illegal. You can't do it.
You can't shoot him. You can't shoot Oddjob.
Real quick, side tangent. Did you see 20 years later, the developer said that it was an advantage in the game that he was actually below the cursor and you couldn't hit him?
Duh.
We all knew it.
You could just chop. You would just be able to chop. I would always, this is another side tangent. This is what I would do to my buddies.
I love that game.
Of course. I mean, GoldenEye was the OG stay up all night game that you play with the boys as you're raging for a sleepover, just drinking Jolt Cola and whatever you could get your hands on in terms of snacks and stay up all night and play.
Quarterbacks. We're talking GoldenEye.
It's substitute teaching week here, ladies and gents, at press coverage. We're talking about whatever we want to talk about. I would always gas up one of my friends, be like, dude, you should be Jaws. You should definitely be Jaws. Be Jaws. And he was like, yeah, he does look really cool. I'll be Jaws. And then he's just this gigantic character. I'm just like,
huge target.
Just killing him every single time. He's like, why can you keep hitting me? I don't know. You're 7 feet tall. I can shoot up the ceiling. I knock it down.
Do you remember the map that you could like walk through the vents and then there was like inside there was like the double entry up going up and then like so I used to like come through the bottom level and like load the outside of the wall up with proximity mines and they would go up and they would go up to like look down the window and just poof.
Proximity mines. When you threw those things out, they came out. They looked like 40-foot diameter discs in that game. Oh, I love that game so much. Oh, GoldenEye. What a fun game. But anyway, back to QBs, Billy.
Do we have to? No.
I mean, listen, you can't bring up GoldenEye. I mean, we'll be here for 2 more hours talking about stories, war stories of GoldenEye, all this stuff.
When it comes to quarterback, if I have one bullet, I'm probably waiting to like quarterback 9, 10, 11, 12 range, right? We're talking about the Dak Prescott's, Trevor Lawrence if he falls, the Russell Wilson's, the Deshaun Watsons, the Aaron Rodgers, this range, right? Mm-hmm. And it's someone that you're not necessarily having to pay the premium price for, but somebody that also has the weapons, the upside, and the offensive line to finish as the quarterback 1 on any week given basis. And so we see every single year a quarterback who's being drafted outside of the top 12 at the position finish inside the top 12 and even in particular inside the top 8. Last year, 2 names that come to mention or to top of my mind when we mention this is Geno Smith, who was going undrafted in most home leagues and in high stakes was going in around 19 or 20. And then Justin Fields, who was going outside the top 15 at the position. And both of them finished inside the top 7 at the quarterback position. And so I think that we can always find a value at quarterback. It's a lot harder to find the value, but when it hits, and you hit big because now you spent your early rounds on the positional players of wide receiver, running back, and tight end, and you gain an edge at those positions. And then if you're able to gain an edge at quarterback while waiting, this is when we start talking about fantasy success. So if you were one of those players that waited and grabbed Geno Smith or waited and grabbed Justin Fields and down the stretch had an every week quarterback 1 while also making sure that you filled your roster out 1 through 10 or 1 through 12 in picks with running back, wide receiver, and tight end, you had a huge advantage over those that went early quarterback. And yes, the consistency of Patrick Mahomes and the consistency of Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen is very appealing. And in best ball, you probably want to lean that way earlier rather than later. But in redraft, when you can pick up a different player and you can, play quarterback roulette and just take your chances the next week on somebody else, I typically like to wait at the position.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. If I have the 101, or the 102, and I come with Justin Jefferson, I love waiting for Kirk Cousins in round 10. Kirk Cousins is the more and more I think about it, that's the guy that I'm going to plant my flag on. I should have done it for Flag Day when we did Dynasty Week, but I wasn't really in the weeds of looking at it. But I'm big on Kirk Cousins having a successful 2023 season. So that's something.
Do you get Cole's cash every time you draft him?
This is something. That was a hilarious tweet. Shout out to Steffi Smalls. That was really, really funny when she said he's the human embodiment of Coach Cash. But I realized something when I saw that tweet, that my vibe, who I am as a person, can be defined by two different pictures of Kirk Cousins. The one with him walking in looking like human Coach Cash because golf polo on all day, every day, buttons up all day, every day, shorts, flip-flops. That's my vibe. And the other being when he was shirtless, wearing 85 chains, dancing on the airplane. If you take those two Kirk Cousinses and mash them into one human being, that is Matty Kiwoom's vibe wholeheartedly. So realizing that was, I don't know if it was a rough moment, but it was certainly a moment that I won't forget in
it's
my
your brother
entire
from
life.
another mother.
I guess so. I don't know if he like me. I have kind of a potty mouth. He seems like a very buttoned up individual, very no nonsense guy watching quarterback, on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but I definitely recommend it. It is football porn in its greatest iteration. I mean, the access that they give to, two legitimate quarterbacks in the NFL is pretty damn cool. So I would definitely recommend that. So for anyone who hasn't checked it out, and if you were having trouble following along because we diverted into GoldenEye and a whole bunch of different things, he's saying mid-round. Billy thinks you can get a lot of you can maximize your teams going mid-round with these guys in terms of QB9, QB12, but also in these redraft seasonal leagues. Don't be scared to go with the JJ. Go with that late round QB, build a really, really strong roster, and then hope to hit. I don't know if you're going to remember this, so maybe I'm putting you on the spot here, but we were sitting around the fire in Kansas City at the PlayerProfiler Draft House, and we were just, every single day, obviously all day, we were talking football. And you mentioned that a certain combo that teams could easily come upon in 2022 was the QB. I think it was like 2 or 3 on the full season. Do you remember who those two QBs were?
Yeah, Carson Wentz and Jared Goff.
There it is.
Yep. It was disgusting, but if you combined them, you had a QB1 every single week of the 2022 campaign because Carson Wentz started super strong. Jared Goff finished extremely strong. And then they got hurt, or Wentz got hurt, and Goff kind of took off. And so I had a team that had these two, and it dominated because I waited so long at the quarterback position, and I hit at running back, wide receiver, and tight end, and then quarterback hit. And so it can happen. Like I said, it's definitely more risky than taking, your Josh Allen, your Patrick Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts. But when it hits, it hits.
Yes, it hits strongly. Were you drafting in 2016 when you made those two selections, the 1-2 pick in the 2016 NFL draft? Were you thinking about that at all, that you just wanted to link up those two guys from that draft class?
No, not at all.
All right, Billy, you've been great in the show, so I'll get you out of here with this last question. Give the fine folks listening, Player Profiler Nation, some of your favorite players that are going after pick 180, so round 15-ish.
Love McCole Hardman this year. He's going in around 19 and 20 at FFPC.
Elaborate. I have not many people have been singing the praises of Mr. Mecole Hardman.
So Aaron Rodgers did an interview, and he specifically mentioned 2 players during Jets camp that he has been enamored with 1, their skill set, but 2, the upside that they bring to this offense. The 2 players were Garrett Wilson and McCole Hardman. McCole Hardman, we know, was drafted as the Tyreek Hill replacement for the Kansas City Chiefs. It didn't work out that way, but has blazing speed, has not really fully developed his route tree, but has a lot of potential inside jet sweeps. We saw him kind of hit late last year inside those jet sweeps, and his versatility of this Kansas City Chiefs offense. He steps into the Jets, in my opinion, who are lacking a real number 2. I don't think he's a number 2, but especially in best ball, when you're just relying on spike weeks, he is the perfect spike week draft this late, because we know he's going to see probably 2, 3, maybe 4 spike weeks from this offense, especially when we have Breece Hall, who's coming off of injury, who's going to be kind of eased into things as we're expecting. And we have McCole Hardman, who can be utilized in the red zone during jet sweeps and screen game. And they could probably utilize that speed. So I like his upside that he has inside this offense. The other one I really like is John Mechie over in Houston. Round 2 draft pick last year. Unfortunately, missed the entire season due to, I believe it was cancer. Don't quote me.
Yeah.
But
leukemia, I believe.
Yeah, it was, a really unfortunate situation. Battled it. Looks like he's healthy, cleared for camp, ready to rock and roll. And, people are just looking at him like he doesn't exist anymore because he's no longer the shiny toy he was in the 2023 draft class. If we were rewind time and we remember where he was going last year, there's no way he's going in round 15, 16, 17. I've seen him go around 17, 18 at times at FFPC. So I think that this offense in particular, they have a lot of, dusty players inside the wide receiver position. McCole Hardman is arguably the number 1. You have Bob Woods, who's been pretty dusty, who's arguably the 2 or 3. They went out and drafted Tank Dell, but outside of that, I mean, Mechie is a pretty clear role to path to success in this offense. And we have a rookie quarterback who's going to be looking for a connection. And if he's able to earn that trust early and often, then I think that John Mechie could significantly outperform his average draft position.
Love it. And those names are putting the cherry on top. If you do decide to go a running back horde at the top of your draft, grab those guys late. Maybe they burst on the scene, help you win a couple games in fantasy football. Billy, I think we did okay job. Well, you're a guest. I think I did okay job filling in for Theo. He is, these are big shoes to fill. The OG is one of the best in the biz. So thank you for taking on Substitute Teacher Week with me. Tell the people listening what you're working on, where they can find you, all that good stuff.
Well, of course, you can find me over at PlayerProfiler, doing all the rankings, projections on a weekly basis. Daria and updating those twice a week right now with more news hitting the streets in the FF world. You can find me all the time also in the FFPC streets. I draft daily over there. Come and get some daily. That's not an overstatement. That's a fact.
Volume drafter, people.
It's in order for me to hit the numbers I need to hit, I have to draft daily. And then, of course, I typically record outside of this week. I record First Class Fantasy every Thursday with Theo and the Dominator on Sunday, with an alternating guest between Matt Kelly every other Thursday and then a guest every other Thursday. And
you're on Twitter. What, FF Muzio FF? I can't remember which one.
At FF Muzio.
FF Muzio. Billy, thank you so much. I'm Matty Kiwoom. You can find me on Twitter at Matty Kiwoom. Also, all the work that you'll find pretty much coming out on PlayerProfiler.com. Game plan each and every Saturday. Derek Brown will be joining me from Fantasy Pros this weekend. Trade Gods on Thursday. D-Bro. This week on Trade Gods, Mr. Matt Kelly's coming on with me. We're going to have a lot of fun breaking down the trades all around fantasy football. OG, I hope I did well in your absence. I hope you were proud of me, OG. Thank you for letting me join on. And everybody, I will see you soon. Peace.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.